now, I'd just like to, by introductions you can see on my video, I'm Rayner, the National Secretary. I'd just like to welcome everyone here tonight for this important and unique meeting. First time we've had such a meeting of this in my 35 years with the union. I've never had the opportunity to attend or to address a national meeting of members involving members from each and every state around the country. I'd just like to start by recognising that we're all on Indigenous land, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. At last count, we had about 1,800 people apply to come onto the hookup tonight. So there's a fair few of us out there, and we've got, as I said before, we've got members from every state and territory. With me tonight is also the branch secretaries and branch representatives from each of the states. I'd just like to take a moment now to welcome and introduce those secretaries to you, starting with Shane Murphy, who is also national president, as well as branch secretary of the New South Wales ACT branch. We have Cameron Bird, secretary of the Queensland branch, Barry McVee, secretary of the Western Australian branch, Leroy Lazaro, secretary of the Victorian branch, Nick Townsend, South Australian Northern Territory branch secretary, and we have Paul Sutton, who's the senior postal organiser for the comms division down there in Tasmania. Also online we have Dahlia Katab, who is a national industrial officer working out of our office in Melbourne. Also, I know that online there is a lot of the branch officials, industrial staff that have taken the time to join the meeting tonight, and I'd just like to welcome them and thank them for their efforts. And of course, most importantly, a huge welcome to all you members, all the members and others, because there may well be some non-members that have joined this, and if you hear what we've got to say tonight, we couldn't stress enough to you the importance of joining the union. Quick overview of tonight's meeting. Obviously, with all that's been happening in the world, things are changing on a daily basis, and there's a lot of things that we've got to deal with that quite frankly, none of us would have known about. We're going to start by giving you an overview of the regulatory changes that Australia Post has gone to the government with. We'll give you an update on where we're at with the EBA, and there'll be a talk about some workplace health and safety issues relating to the COVID-19 situation. We'll also be hearing from a couple of members on their first-hand experiences working during this difficult time. And in a moment, I'm going to hand over to Dahlia, who will run you through some of the housekeeping information and give you an overview on how you can ask questions during the meeting tonight and how that works in this format that we're using. But before I do hand over to Dahlia, I just want to thank each and every one of you. You've been out there working on the front line in a situation that none of us ever envisaged would ever happen, but you're out there risking your own health and safety and that of your family to ensure that the community receives the services that you provide. And from our point of view, from the union point of view, and I'm sure it's echoed by each of the secretaries, just our sincere thank you for out there doing that. And I can tell you there's been a lot of public support for the posties and the mail workers and the drivers that are out there providing the service during this difficult time. So whether you're in retail or whether you're in a distribution or processing centre, delivery or driver, wherever you work in Australia Post, you've been out there putting yourself in harm's way to keep our community safe. I'd like to thank you all for that, and your dedication doesn't go unnoticed, I can assure you of that. They're tough times that we've got from a work and from a personal perspective. We've all got our issues we need to deal with as a result of this pandemic, and your union is here to support you all the way through this and give you whatever support that you need. So we'll go a bit deeper into some of these issues as the speakers go through, but for now, I'd just like to hand over to Dahlia, who will run through some of the housekeeping for tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg, and good evening, everybody. I'm just going to run through some housekeeping notes. I'm hoping the internet stays stable because we have had some issues, but here goes. If anybody is having any technical problems, you can ask for help by writing a message in the chat. So down the bottom of your screen, you've got a chat function, and the support team will help you out. So just write your message in there. Any questions that you have about the topics, about Australia Post, about your employment, etc., just use the Q&A button, which is down the bottom of your screen, and you can type your message in there. So we'll do our best to get around to answering as many questions as possible. If we don't get around to your question tonight, we will make sure that we follow up. When you are asking a question, we just ask that you put your name down if it's not your name on your actual, if that doesn't come up next to your image there. If it's not appearing on the screen, I should say, then just write your name and, if appropriate, just what area of post you're working in so that we can understand the context of your question and get back to you. We've got a team of industrial officers, as Greg mentioned, and they're there to answer your questions, and we'll also be putting some of the questions to the panellists to answer live for you tonight. And so if you've got any questions, use the Q&A function. If you've got any technical issues, use the chat function. Also, just to let you know, we'll be recording the discussion this evening so that we can send it out to anybody that wasn't able to make it. And that shouldn't impact anyone who's speaking to the group. But if you have any concerns about that at all, just make sure you speak to somebody in the chat about it. So we'll get underway, and I will hand over to Shane. He's our first speaker on the regulations. Thanks.
Yes, thanks, Darlene. Good evening, members across Australia. And as Greg has said before, this is breaking new ground for the CWU and members across the country. Now, state branches coming together right across the country to deliver you your first national hookup in relation to some very important issues. I'll just touch on the first one, and that's in relation to announcements by Australia Post most recently, as a couple of weeks ago, by Christine Holgate, the CEO, and obviously the federal government in relation to changes to the regulation in the way letters are currently serviced and delivered to the community. What that regulation proposal currently change means at the moment, or what we're seeing, and it's before the Parliament as we speak, and it currently has not been passed through the Parliament, and I'll come to that shortly. But what this means is Australia Post have gone to the government under the cover of pandemic, saying that obviously we have seen across the network, and there's no denying a massive increase in domestic product, and obviously they're using that as a reason why they need to change, pardon me, the delivery standard across the network in relation to letters. So it's moving from what we currently see as letter delivery every day to letter delivery every second day in metropolitan areas. This does not affect at this point in time regional and rural areas. It is only the metropolitan area that is subject to this change. And it also will affect our retail sector, where we're unclear at the moment what it actually means in relation to the ongoing post offices remaining open 9 to 5, and obviously how many post offices remain in the network. So at the moment, these proposals are obviously very serious to us. The union received no consultation from Australia Post right from the outset in relation to this matter. They went cap in hand to the government in relation to these changes, and we found out obviously via the announcements from the media, and since then we have soon followed up. Now, members are already starting to see what we perceived some of these changes, even though they haven't gone through Parliament yet, starting to play out in their workplaces every day. We've already seen changes to our van drivers' operations across the country, where SPP changes have ceased on Sundays, and we're now picking that mail up on a Monday. We're also seeing changes in delivery at the moment across the network, where in delivery, we've had our letters being parked and delivered every second day, and the focus on delivering packets and parcels, etc., express post. So we're starting to see that, and in essence also cutting back on overtime in some of these areas, and in some places bringing product back to the delivery centre instead of delivering it for those additional hours of overtime. In essence, what it does mean is we may see what we believe in, even though at this stage the information coming from Australia Post is not free flowing and it's very, very minimal. What we are believing at the moment is we believe to see what we see as an alternate day delivery service. Now, this just doesn't affect our members in delivery. It doesn't matter whether you're picking up a letter, like I said, in an SPV box, whether you're transporting the letter, whether you're processing the letter, or whether you're delivering the letter, you're going to be affected. It will mean this change will affect, we believe, all of those operations. Now, when we come to the alternate day delivery, whilst this is not very clear at the moment what it means, what we understand it at the moment to mean, subject to further discussions with Australia Post and that information hopefully becoming more readily available to the union, is that we'll see posties split up across the network. We'll see a mail postie and a parcel postie, where the mail postie will be delivering mail and small products, and the parcel postie obviously delivering other products. What it means in relation to changes in processing of letters and so on, because you don't have to be Einstein, I believe, to work out that if you're slowing down the service of letters by delivering them every second day, and for interstate every 5 days, that is a significant change in relation to how it is processed, when it is picked up, and when it is delivered. So at the moment, these changes, as I said, haven't been through the Parliament. We are to have some serious discussions, hopefully next week with Australia Post, along with all the branch secretaries, and hopefully this will become more clearer in relation to what the regulations would look like operationally across the network for all of our members working in those sectors that I've mentioned. When I come to retail, we've already seen it starting to play out. We've already had different areas in different locations, even in rural and regional areas, where some post office under the cover of COVID-19 have closed and not been open 9 to 5. The union has been taking action to that. We've done a number of media interviews in relation to those closures, taken that up with Australia Post, and we're concerned what does the retail changes under these regulations actually mean moving forward, considering we're starting to see some of this already play out in our retail post offices. So the union hasn't been sitting on its hands and feet since this announcement. We've met with the Communications Minister of the federal government. We've pressed him in relation to these regulations and what they mean. And in the future, does it mean down the track, would Australia Post be considered to be privatised? Now, whilst the government denies that at the moment, we've pressed them to make a public statement in relation to that matter. And then we've also written to them, and we're yet to receive or see any comments further publicly in relation to that from the government. So we have concerns, obviously long-term, these operational changes and setting the business up down the track for future privatisation. Now, when I say we've also met with the opposition, Michelle Rowlands, and we've also met with speaking to other people of members of Parliament at the moment. And as I said, this is subject to the Parliament and is subject to the debate, I believe, in the Senate or some discussion in the Senate around this matter. And the union is following this through and will have a lot more to say about this in the coming days. But in essence, I'll just wrap it up like this. We are seeing our members right now already affected. We are already seeing the SPB changes I mentioned earlier. We're already seeing overtime in some places, being reduced. We're also seeing letters already being left behind. And in some areas, we've had reports of express post and other product being left behind. These are effects we believe related to regulation that will be changing in the future. We have concerns around alternate day deliveries and how that will affect our members in delivery. We certainly have concerns of how this will affect our members in the processing centres of letters, and obviously those van drivers and transport drivers that go and pick up and transport that mail around. Once we meet with Australia Post again further in relation to this issue, we'll be planning state meetings as well, or state hookups as well, with the state branches and the members to further brief them in relation to what it really means operationally when Australia Post actually come clean and inform the union exactly what it looks like for all our members in the future. I'm happy to take any questions, Greg, but I'll leave it at that at the moment. It's a very serious matter, the regulations. It does significantly change the way Australia Post has been structured, how it's functioned, and obviously we'll continually brief members as this matter develops over the coming days and weeks.
Thank you, Shane. There are some questions coming through, and I've just picked out a few which I thought would be good to discuss live. The first one is from Nathan, and I'll read it out. They haven't put, they do say PDO Strathfield DC, I think. It says, Australia Post has been non-stop with excessive volumes of parcels and deliveries. Where does Post's financials stand at the moment? compared to this time last year. And I'll just read another one which is linked to that before I get you to answer, Shane. It's from, the name is Manfred Gellenbeck, Gorm PDO. He says, the number of parcels is going through the roof. At the same time, management say overtime is not permitted. Bottom line, more work in less time. Clearly the attempt to use the COVID situation to increase the workload pressure for posties.
I'll just add, and thank you for those questions that are very related from members across the country. Firstly, I want to say in relation to Australia Post, and the branch secretaries would support this wholeheartedly along with the National Secretary. We have been meeting regularly with Australia Post and pressing them in relation to the financial position of the company. Now, whilst we understand that we have seen a decline in international, it's obvious that Australia Post are not processing passports and they're down 80%, and you don't have to be Einstein, as I said before, because borders are closed and nobody can travel, so that's automatic. So we have seen a reduction in some areas, but we're certainly seeing a massive, as our members are experienced, increasing in express post, packets and parcels. Now, we have pressed Australia Post only 2 or 3 weeks ago. What is the financial position of the company? I mean, Greg will report about bargaining shortly, because it is relevant to the position of the company, the future of the company, our members' jobs, and the negotiation in relation to the agreement. At the moment, Australia Post have not provided the union and so far refused to provide us with exactly where the company sits financially. So whilst we see a decline in some areas, and we clearly understand that from a leadership perspective, we also understand we're seeing a massive increase in domestic product, and we are seriously asking the questions, what is the difference in the losses between those areas that have declined under COVID-19, and what is the difference in the gains versus in the areas where we're seeing a significant increase in huge parcel volume and express post? And at this point in time, we don't have that information, but I'll say this to members. I do believe that Australia Post will make a profit later this year when that will be announced. What that profit will be, I don't know, but I certainly believe Australia Post will make a profit on the back of the increased domestic product during the COVID-19 situation.
Thanks, Shane.
Overtime, I just want to touch on overtime. I said it before and I'm just going to repeat. What we are seeing playing out at the moment is unacceptable. Leaving product behind, customer service, in my view, is not at the forefront of what Australia Post at the moment are doing. It's affecting our members' take-home pay, but I'll tie it back to what I started to talk about, is exactly the regulation. This is about managing the fixed costs, and we don't deny we're happy to manage fixed costs, but not at the expense of customer service, bringing product back. And when our posties and our members, whether it be in retail or transport or vans operations across the country, are passionate about the product they receive, or they see in their centre, or they received the process, they like to get it done. But what we're seeing at the moment is quite opposite, and seeing management managing the business, in my view, in light of what we're going to see if the regulation proceeds through the Parliament.
Great, thank you, Shane. There was one other question which I might quickly throw to you before we move on to Greg. It was, I'll just find it. Sorry, one moment. The question was, I was told by management we don't make any money on parcels. Is this true?
Sorry, Dahlia, what was that?
The question was, I was told by management that we don't make any money on parcels. Is this true?
Well, the proof will be in the pudding when the profits announced later this year, just exactly whether or not they do, because the increase right now, as we've all known and our members feel it every day, is in the small packets, the express post and the large parcels. So I've made a statement as the National President of the Union and also the New South Wales ACT Secretary that I have a view that Australia Post, I believe, will make a profit. What the amount will be, I don't know. But I do believe Post will be profitable, and that will be on the back of the members' hard work, processing all of that increase in the domestic product we've seen during COVID-19, where people have been working from home and our members being relied upon to deliver that process and deliver that product. I think you're frozen, Dahlia. You're right now?
I think so. I think I'm back. Thank you, Shane. So before I hand over to Greg, I just want to let you know there are some questions coming through on the EBA. I'm just reserving them for when we speak about the EBA, and then I'll field them over. But over to you, Greg. Thank you.
Thanks, Dahlia. As members may recall, we were due to commence bargaining earlier this year, and the union put a survey around to find out what the issues of importance were to our members and what they wanted to see in the EBA. The top 3 results of that survey, number 1 was safeguarding conditions and entitlements. Number 2 was job security. And number 3 was safeguarding superannuation benefits. Now, just as we were about to sit down and commence bargaining, we even had all the travel booked for people to come in to a central place to commence the bargaining. That's when the travel bans from the COVID-19 pandemic hit. So we couldn't meet. So we had to stay in our respective states. We've had many teleconferences with Australia Post trying to sort something out. Australia Post came to us and said they wanted to do an MOU, which is a Memorandum of Understanding, trying to put in place a stopgap measure that covered the business up until such time as we could start doing the enterprise bargaining. And they were proposing this MOU to apply for 12 months. Problem with the MOU that they gave us, it basically had no job security clause to it. It basically had a clause that allowed management, in management's view, to do whatever they want, whenever they needed to get through the pandemic. And there was no pay rises associated with this MOU. So there was a number of discussions, a number of heated discussions, where the union's position was quite simply, during this period of uncertainty, we wanted job security, we wanted a pay result or a financial result for our members to get through the process. And we didn't want any involuntary redundancies being brought in. After a lot of toing and throwing, then we did get closer on a document, but we didn't get quite over the line. Management were proposing, we're not proposing a job security clause. The job security clause only went so far as what management said were those directly impacted by the COVID pandemic, or by the regulatory changes, I apologise, by the regulatory changes. From that, you can extrapolate out of that they meant purely the frontline delivery. Everyone else involved in the delivery of letters and parcels would not be subject to the job security clause. So obviously that was unacceptable to your union. Management then put on the table that they perhaps would be prepared to share a financial income with us. That incentive they gave us was a 1% bonus, 1% of your gross salary, contingent upon the organisation making a profit of at least $41 million. Now, coincidentally, if you don't know if you're wondering why they came up with that number, 41 million, that was the profit they made last year. Again, the union rejected this. We've seen out there in the workplace, we've seen people like Coles and Woolies get payments for being on the front line of the COVID pandemic and keeping those companies going. We've sought the same for you from Australia Post. We are steadfast in our position that there needs to be a job security clause there. Given we're not reaching any agreement on the MOU and management aren't coming to the table on those 2 sticking points in particular, management have now changed tack and said, come back to us and said, well, now we want to negotiate an EBA. And they wanted to negotiate an EBA under similar conditions to how we're talking to you tonight, by teleconference, not being in the same room bargaining with them, trying to conduct this over a technology platform that doesn't let you see the whites of their eyes when you're negotiating with them, and that's not really acceptable to us. So we've told management at this stage, because management actually wanted to commence bargaining yesterday, and we've told management that we are A, not available, B, it's not practical to commence discussions in a situation like this where you've got travel bans, where you've got restrictions on where you can stay, where you can't get everyone into a room together. The very process that management set up wouldn't have even let the union negotiators caucus in the one place. So we told management that we will not be prepared to put ourselves at risk by travelling to them and to conduct the bargaining. However, we're prepared to have another look at it on the 15th of June. So if as the country's going the way it's going, that that some of the restrictions may be lifted, putting aside the blue between the New South Wales Premier and the Queensland and WA Premiers that's been playing out in the press lately. If those travel restrictions can be restricted, there might be an opportunity to commence bargaining. However, we have put Australia Post on notice that we're not going to enter into bargaining wearing blinkers. We want to know what the financial position of the company is going to be. We want to hear their end of year result and find out how much money they do actually have to play with. And when you've got an employer who's more interested in providing a government dividend than paying you a pay rise, that's a concern. The other issue that we want to see play out before we can commit to a long-term enterprise bargaining is, as Shane's reported on, the regulatory reform. What does that mean? How is it going to be implemented? Because some of the changes that management have been implementing already, they're adopting a different approach in different states. So we've said to them, whatever they do in terms of regulatory reform, there needs to be some consistency across the country, and there needs to be some national guidelines that form the basis for the discussions down below. Once we know that, once we know what we're bargaining with and what the possible outcomes can be and what the appropriate remuneration we should be seeking, once we know that, then we can go in with both eyes open and commence the bargaining with Post, knowing what's reasonable and what's not. We do want to have everybody in the same room when we commence the bargaining. It is no good doing it over a platform like this. So what will happen between now and when bargaining commences? I've been told by senior management today that they're going to write me another letter about when to commence bargaining, and I'll just add it to the list. I've got, papers here to 10 dead trees there, just in management writing to us about when we're going to meet and when we're not going to meet. The other issue coming out of the EBA is currently the government has put a freeze on increasing salaries of any government department. Australia Post falls into that at this stage. However, the government bargaining guidelines, which will take place eventually, and we'll be negotiating under those for the EBA proper, it is our view that Australia Post, as a government business enterprise, is not limited by those bargaining guidelines. Australia Post have a different view. They seem to think they are, and they're beholden to their owner ministers, which is the Communications Minister and the Finance Minister. So it's going to be interesting times. The important thing is that you, as members, keep yourself informed. As things develop, we'll be putting out circulars. We'll certainly be having more of these meetings. There'll be state-based meetings where you'll have the opportunity to get involved, read what's coming out, get involved in any programs, because none of us expected to be in this situation that we're in today. It's all unique. It's all new, and none of the secretaries around here have ever had to bargain in these situations. So we're going to force our way through it in order to get you the best outcome possible. We're going to need your help. We're going to need your involvement. And sometimes at short notice, we're going to need your help. So we ask you to keep an eye on the websites, keep an eye on the social media, and keep across the information's coming out so that when we need to move, we're ready to move. So I'll end it at that, Dara, unless people have got some other questions. Although can I just say, I noticed a question that was up there that I'd just like to quickly answer because I only got this information today. Someone said how many people have got coronavirus in Australia Post today. I can report to you that there has been no new cases in Australia Post since April. All of those that contracted coronavirus have now recovered, and however, there is 24 people in isolation just in case. So that's the current state of play in relation to coronavirus. So I'll stop there, Dahlia, and we'll take any questions.
Thank you. Try and keep the answer. Is that any better?
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay, excellent. Sorry about that, everybody. I'll get straight into the question just in case it happens again. From Don Blair, I'd like to see an agreed EBA outcome should be back paid to the expiration date of the previous agreement. This would stop posts sitting on their hands and creating a virtual pay freeze. What are the Secretaries' views on this? So I'm not sure who wants to answer that, or if you want to just make comment. But yeah,
I'm happy to have a go, and I won't. I obviously can't preempt bargaining because we haven't sat down to commence bargaining. But it is our intention as a bargaining group, and the bargaining group for Australia Post and for the union is all the branch secretaries plus Paul from Tassie, and we'll be joined by the CPSU. There's some other, shall I say, smaller bargaining representatives that will also be raising things. We're conscious of the fact you haven't had a pay rise since last year. And whenever we sit down to do the bargaining, we'll be trying to either front end it or do something with it to try and minimise that impact on when you last had your pay increase. We're not interested in dragging this out. Australia Post might be, but we're not interested in dragging this out forever and a day just to try and freeze you out of any pay increases. So, in answer to the question, we will be looking to address that situation once we sit down to bargaining and once we put our claims on Australia Post. She's frozen again, is she?
Yes, I think you need to get some better internet, Dahlia. You're frozen.
There's one, I'll do a few here if you like, I can bring them up. One question there was Coles offered their frontline workers $75 for working through the coronavirus. We've put that to Australia Post. We've already put that to them and say, why don't you make a payment to your troops for being out there on the job day in, day out, paying this thing. Their response was, Coles is earning more money than us, they can afford to pay it. So,
I think I'm back. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, you're back now.
Yep. Okay. Sorry. Next question. Andrew PDO. He says, it seems the majority of Christine Holgate's offensive hinges on the male declining.
No,
Male declining, go. Dahlia's out again. You're not.
I don't know what question she was asking. I'll bring another one up.
You're having trouble with the internet, Dahlia. Maybe drop out and rejoin.
One question here, Jeff, of PDO in Queensland. Has Australia Post given some time frame what they seek from the government regarding regulatory changes, i.e. 12 months or 6 months?
I'll answer that, Greg.
Yeah, sure, mate.
Just in relation to that, guys, it's 12 months, and I should have mentioned this regulatory is for 12 months.
During the pandemic.
Hang on, Dahlia. Hang on.
I can't understand you.
So, I'm just going to answer this. It's for 12 months, the regulations. Obviously, we don't believe when you're making such change to alternate day delivery that this is for 12 months. We understand this will be long term, and we're concerned that it will be not only metropolitan areas if it becomes the norm, it'll be for rural and regional as well. So these are significant reforms to the company. It's significant reforms to our members' jobs. And I want to touch on something about the EBA that Greg just said before. It's okay to go and get, a couple of percent or 3% or whatever we land on it as a pay rise for our members, which we are subject to the government bargaining policy. I'll mention that. But at the same time, we've got to be looking at the take-home pay of our members and the effects these changes are having on that overall. Because it's okay to get another 20 or 30 bucks a week, but it's not okay if you're losing hundreds of dollars in overtime at the same time. That's affecting your ability to keep food on the table and pay your bills at home. So I'll just make that point, and I think it's important.
Thanks, everyone. I think we'll probably move on to health and safety section. Shane, you were going to do that. And if I drop out again, someone else will jump in and ask.
Yeah, because I've noticed, thanks, Dahlia, and I've noticed a couple of questions related to, you know, our start times in delivery, the 1.5 metres of social distancing. So I just want to kick it off, and I won't go as far as Greg did as an opening, but I want to reiterate what Greg said on behalf of the union, that, you know, members are out there doing it every single day. Ever since the start of COVID-19, members have been stepping up to the plate, whether it be in retail outlets, opening the doors and letting customers into service, whether it's a van driver going to a business or a post office or anywhere else to pick up, whether it's our transport drivers doing the same thing, processing, handling the products they were concerned about whether these things happen, and obviously our delivery members, the link to the community of delivering the product. You guys have been out there and you've been doing it in very, very difficult circumstances. I'm sure many of our members have had anxiety going to work during this period of time. So on behalf of the union, like Greg said, a big thanks from us, and I'm sure the community, as you know, support you, because we're seeing many thanks of emails to us and you know, the post-pandemic, thanks for posting and all sorts of other things, and they're certainly on our side. But since the commencement of this, the whole COVID-19 situation around the world, and particularly in Australia, the union has been at the forefront with Australia Post. There was a shortage early on around and concerns around sanitizer across the country. We were having daily meetings with Australia Post. I'm meeting all of the secretaries were involved across the states, pressuring Australia Post to provide hand sanitizer and other products to our members as quickly and as urgently as possible. Obviously, there was a bit of delay up front, but we certainly, from there, saw sanitizer and other products and cleaning arrangements starting to be put in place. On the back of that, we saw the government moving in relation to social distancing laws, which remain in place, as we know, across the country. Never before have we had to see our members significantly in delivery centres and in some vans operations across the country have to go through changes overnight from what their current start times were to what the start times were tomorrow because of social distancing. Now, I must say it's a frustration for the union. I know it's a frustration for the branch secretaries across the country, getting calls from members who are very frustrated in these places having to work the 2 shifts. But the alternative was, and I must say it, when this hit us in the face and our members in the face in delivery centres where we can't keep 1.5 metres apart and in one person per 4 square metres, it meant that Australia Post could have implemented some posties working on one day and other posties working the following day. Obviously, that was not an option for our members, nor it was an option for the community, and the effects it would have had on our members and their take-home pay. We had to come up with an alternate option that would ensure the health and safety of our members in these workplaces, and we've never ever has seen our members or the union have to go through change within a 24, 48-hour period to ensure the operation could continue and try and at least follow the guidelines that the recommendation from chief medical officers were to implement social distancing. So yes, it's here to stay at the moment. I've got to say that. I know a lot of members who are rotating start times and delivery don't want to hear that, but at the same time, the government is insisting on maintaining 1.5 metres in those regulations, and while that is in place, as a union, we must follow those guidelines. But I reassure members, at any stage in the future, that we go back to some normality, and we don't know when that will be, and I'm sure everybody has the same view. But when that is, we'll be jumping all over Australia Post to obviously put back in place those start times that were there before, and having people going back to some normality. In relation to retail, we've also been out there on the front line, our members, I said before. We've had Ellie, we've had Cindy down there, we've also had our National Assistant Secretary, Nicole Robinson, heavily involved in issues related to our retail workers. We were requesting as part of, and you've seen the rollout, and in all of these meetings we've had with Australia Post, the implementation of screens in our retail outlets that we've seen Australia Post implement. We requested our badges for our members to be worn in relation to abusive customers that we were getting feedback from our ladies and gents working in retail outlets to try and stem some of those comments being made to our people on the front line. And also, more recently, we're seeing if you signs go up in outlets where we've been insisting to Australia Post around aggressive customers and how they need to be managed, or more openly signs to obviously try and encourage those people to more obviously have more respect for our people. So you are on the front line, guys. There will continually be issues arise at workplaces. We're still getting calls across the country on different days in different states in relation to social distancing may be failing here or there, or cleaning, and we're jumping all over those. And I know the state branch secretaries in each state, when they're raising the members are raising these in their states, are jumping on these pretty quickly. If you see these issues going forward, I urge you to contact your state branch organiser or secretary. Let them know, so we can ensure we do our best to maintain as best we can the service to the community, but most importantly, number one, the health and safety of our members as we continually work through this COVID-19 crisis in unprecedented times that nobody in Australia and around the world have probably experienced in this generation. We'll continually put our minds, number one, as Greg said, as the forefront is our members' health and safety when issues arise. Number two, for our people and the union, is the job security of our members and ensuring that we continue to maintain our people in a job while Australia and the rest of the world obviously goes through a difficult time in relation to the world economy and our local economy, where millions of people have lost their jobs. And obviously the third thing we want to see at the end of this or during this program process is a reward for our members financially in relation to the work they're doing on the front line. Happy to take any questions. Stay safe, members. Report your health and safety matters to your union, and we will be taking them up as we have been right from the outset of COVID-19.
Thanks, Shane. There's not many questions on COVID. There are some general questions, one of which is about penalty rates. There's quite a few on penalty rates and the trials. People asking how long would they wait for the results on the trials, as well as just asking on some clarity around the 6:30 a.m. starters and the trials ongoing before COVID struck, and just hearing a little bit about thoughts on that, on penalty rates and 6:30 a.m. starters.
Well, I'm happy to lead the charge and happy for any of the secretaries to jump in. But we met with this, we've been pushing this issue for a pay equality for, in particular, those in delivery who, as we all know, currently earn 15% less based on a start time prior to 6:30 or a start time 6:30 beyond. We already have one network sites in flow and they're already locked in and continuing to apply. They're no longer a trial in our view. And what we're seeing is Seven Hills and those places at Ingleburn in New South Wales. And I know there's many others in Queensland and Victoria, South Australia, WA and Tasmania. They maintain and they're consistently on penalty rates. What we're concerned about is there's other areas we're still pressing for, and I'm consistently getting this from other members in delivery in my state, about when are we going to get access to one network. The next one right now at the moment, I'm about to go arrange and we're putting in place to go to Canberra here, and I know there's other states looking at doing things as well. We are moving to one network there, and there'll be further discussions about one network rollout elsewhere. We are pressing post consistently about this. If you like, it's not from the union perspective this is being delayed. It'll be subject to a further discussion during bargaining. No two ways about that, because it's time's up and we want pay equality for our members, regardless of their start time in Australia in relation to the delivery.
Thanks, Shane. Did anyone else want to comment on that? Otherwise, I'll move to the next one. There's a question here. Has the priority mail
Start again, darling. What was the question?
Has the priority mail service ceased?
My understanding is Australia Post have stopped offering that as a service, but they'll honour anyone that's already prepaid it and put the priority label on it.
And that's part of the regulation change.
And there's quite a few. I might turn my video off and that might help the audio so it doesn't overload the computer. I was just saying there's quite a few comments and questions about Australia Post using COVID-19 as an excuse and using the opportunity to make changes within the business that aren't directly related to COVID, but just an opportunistic use of the pandemic to make changes. Did anyone want to comment on that?
If I put it this way, never miss a good opportunity.
100%
Never miss a good opportunity to, or a pandemic or a crisis, to really do what you want to do, and that's what we're concerned about. We don't, and we understand, and I say this to members, we understand, and we've been doing this across all of the states, changing the way we operate, whether it be in processing and shift changes or start times to relevant to when the work's there or whatever, and when the transport's arrangements are there. We've changed in vans. We've changed, and we know we have changed in delivery for our people there, where We've put people in EDVs that were unpopular, or Australia Post introduced EDVs. They've got those because we're transitioning to a network and we understand to more packets and parcels. And we want our posties to be at the forefront and our people in Australia Post at the forefront of delivering that product. And we do get that we have to transition probably people into red vans, as Christine Holgate did announce, to deliver the product that we're now getting that has slowing up. But that doesn't mean, I believe, that we have to go through massive change under the cover of COVID-19 and change the world. Do we have to change? We probably do. Do we have to go to the level of extent of delaying customers' community service to an alternate day delivery? Well, the union doesn't believe so. So that just gives you an example exactly what we have a view of at the moment. And as I said earlier, we'll have probably a lot more to say about this moving forward.
Thanks, Shane. I'm just conscious of time. We did want to move on just to talk a little bit about next steps and where we want to go to from here, and then
happy to do that, Dara, and then hand to Greg to close. Look, guys, in relation to tonight, firstly, I'll just quickly thank everybody on behalf of myself and the union and the branch secretaries. We're going to launch tonight, when you get off this hookup, an online petition, and it'll be called Postal Pandemic. The petition being set up, and you will be emailed all the information in SMS, is in relation to a couple of issues. It's on your screen. It's just been put on the screen now. You're going to be asked, our members across the country, to sign the petition. We're not asking for much on behalf of our members. We're asking for a commitment for the long-term service commitment of Australia Post in relation to scaling back delivery service during COVID-19 and beyond. We're asking that in relation to our workers' shifts and they hamper their ability to get mail delivery to customers. And you'll see what all the information is in relation to that. And I won't go through it all tonight, but I'm going to ask members right across the country, whether you're on, many of your workmates may be at work in night shift, afternoon shift, and may not be able to attend. They'll get access to this via our social media channels, and there'll be recordings. But I'll ask you to go to your workmates tomorrow, ask them to get online, share the link, sign the petition, and let's send a message that we're all together and we want to see a better Australia Post for the future. The last thing I'll say is we're also not too far away from launching what we want to see Australia Post look like for the future, what we call the future of post. The union has spent a bit of our money, a little bit of money recently on behalf of our members as this started to evolve in relation to these regulation changes, in relation to the future of Australia Post. We've engaged a independent think tank company, highly respected in per capita. They're providing us a report. We've certainly put input into that report, and we're asking, obviously we want to have a say in what we think Australia Post looks like, both for the community in the future and our members at work across the country. So therefore, guys, I urge you to talk to your workmates, sign the petition in relation to the postal pandemic, get the message out there. There'll be further meetings in relation to these. There'll be state hookups to do a follow-up, and we'll be doing a launch of this future of post once this has been finalised over the coming days by our think tank company across the country. Thanks for your time, and I'll hand to Greg to close.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. I'll just support Shane in his comments there. I just want to thank you for coming along tonight and showing your interest in your job and in working at Australia Post. There's been a lot of questions tonight, and we've answered some of them. A lot of them we've taken notes of, and we'll endeavour to put some responses together for you. These meetings, this is the first time ever, as I mentioned in my opening, that I've seen a national meeting of members involving every state. And it certainly won't be the last one. We'll be having more like this, and we'll be having, as Shane mentioned, some state-based meetings. Now, the state-based meetings, depending on numbers, give us a bit more opportunity to have a bit more interactive presentation and respond quicker. But there will be a number of meetings that we will be holding. And we urge you, as Shane said, talk to your mates, get them involved, get the petition done. We've got a lot of challenges ahead. No union has ever had to deal with bargaining in EBA in these situations. And we're going to have to rely on you to support us out there as we will support you. It's not going to be easy. I won't pretend to say anything else. It's going to be a hard slog to get through and get the result, a result that you're happy with. So I want to thank you again for all coming along tonight, and I'm proposing to end. A couple of my colleagues just jumped in early, but like some of the stuff we've seen on the TV, thank you for doing what you're doing.
And I just want to acknowledge there's a lot of questions that have come through that are unanswered. We will revert back to them and try and get in touch if you've left your name. Otherwise, we might do a bulletin or something. But thank you all for your participation. And yeah, sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but you know, we don't want to keep you here all night either. So thanks all.
Thank you.
We'll respond to you. Thank you.